Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. Listen, I need to tell you something before midnight, before I lose another day, before I forget who told me this story in the first place. You know that feeling when you wake up and can't remember what day it is? That split second of confusion before your brain catches up. Well, imagine if that feeling never went away. Imagine if the days themselves started disappearing, one by one, year by year. My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm 32 years old. At least, I think I am. See, that's the thing about losing days. You start questioning everything, even your own age. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me ask you something first. When was the last time you checked your calendar? I mean, really checked it. Counted the days, made sure they were all there. Because I guarantee you, right now, someone listening to this is missing a day they don't even know about yet. The story begins now. It started 3 years ago, June 15th, 2022. I remember because it was my daughter Emma's 7th birthday. We'd planned this elaborate unicorn-themed party at our house in Portland. 20 kids, a bounce house, the works. I woke up that morning with the worst headache I'd ever had. Not a hangover. I don't drink, this was different. Like someone had reached into my skull and scrambled everything around. Sarah, my wife, was already downstairs setting up decorations. "Morning, sleepyhead," she called up. "Party starts at 2. Don't forget to pick up the cake." I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face. That's when I noticed it. The calendar on our bathroom wall. June only had 29 days. Now, I know what you're thinking. June always has 30 days. Every year, without fail. But there it was, clear as day. 29 little squares. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, counted again. 29. "Sarah," I called out. "Did you get a new calendar?" "What? No. Why?" I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my phone, pulled up the calendar app. June showed 30 days. Normal. I looked back at the wall calendar, still 29. Must be a misprint, I thought. Weird, but whatever. The party went fine. Emma loved her unicorn cake. Kids screamed and played. Parents made small talk over juice boxes and veggie strays. Normal suburban afternoon. Except I kept checking calendars. Every single one in our house showed June with 29 days. The one in the kitchen. The little desktop one in my home office. Even Emma's school calendar stuck to the fridge. All 29 days. But every digital calendar, phones, computers, tablets, showed 30. That night, after tucking Emma in, I sat in my office Googling June 29th days calendar error and finding nothing. Sarah thought I was being ridiculous. "It's just a printing error, Mark. Probably all from the same batch." She was probably right, had to be. What else could it be? But then, July came. And I counted again. 30 days on the wall calendars, should be 31. August, 30 days. Should be 31. September, 29 days. Should be 30. Every month was exactly 1 day short. Only on physical calendars. Only the ones in my house. And here's the thing. Nobody else noticed. Not Sarah, not Emma, not my brother when he visited for Labor Day. "Hey, Tom," I'd said, pointing at the kitchen calendar. "Notice anything weird about September?" He'd squinted at it. No? What am I looking for?" "Count the days." He counted out loud. I watched his finger trace across the squares. 27, 28, 29, 30. 30 days. So, 30. He counted 30. I saw 29. That's when the real fear started. Not the creeping, cozy kind that makes you pull blankets up to your chin. The cold, sharp kind that makes you question your sanity. I made an appointment with my doctor. Full workup. Blood tests. MRI. The works. Everything came back normal. He referred me to a therapist, Dr. Peterson. Nice woman with an office full of succulents and those inspirational quotes in cursive. Stress can manifest in strange ways, she'd said. You mentioned work has been demanding lately? It had been. I'm a software engineer for a tech startup downtown. 60-hour weeks were the norm. But this wasn't stress. I knew stress. This was something else. I stopped mentioning the calendars to anyone. Started keeping track in a notebook instead. Private. Hidden in my desk drawer. June 2022, 29 days. July 2022, 30 days. August 2022, 30 days. Every month, 1 day short. Every month, only I could see it. Then December came, and with it, the first gap. December 15th, 2022. I remember going to bed. I remember Sarah complaining about her sister's Christmas list. I remember the sound of rain on our bedroom window. I don't remember December 16th. I woke up on the 17th thinking it was the 16th. Checked my phone. 17th. Checked the date on my laptop. 17th. But in my mind, in my bones, it was the 16th. Morning, Sarah said, already dressed for work. Don't forget you promised to take Emma to see Santa at the mall today. Today? I thought that was tomorrow. She gave me that look. The one that says, you forgot again, didn't you? Mark, we talked about this yesterday. You literally put it in your phone. I checked my phone. There it was. Calendar reminder. Emma, Mall Santa, 3P. Set for December 17th. Created December 16th. A day I had no memory of. I faked my way through the morning, checked my texts. I'd had full conversations on the 16th, sent emails, posted on social media. There was even a photo of me and Emma at Voodoo Donut. She was holding a pink frosted donut bigger than her face, and I was laughing at something. I didn't remember any of it, but everyone else did. Sarah referenced conversations we'd had. Emma talked about the donut. My boss replied to emails I'd sent. December 16th had happened. For everyone except me, the notebook in my desk drawer, I'd written an entry for December 15th. Then nothing. Then December 17th in different ink. Shakier handwriting. Like I'd been confused. Lost. I spent that night going through everything. Photos, texts, emails, building a timeline of December 16th. I'd woken up at 6:47 a.m. according to my fitness tracker, had coffee with Sarah, drove Emma to school, worked from home, picked Emma up, went to Voodoo Donut, came home, watched some Netflix show about serial killers, went to bed at 10:34 p.m., a completely normal day. Except I'd lost it, like it had been cut out of my life with surgical precision. The wall calendar in the kitchen showed December with 30 days. Should have been 31. Was I living the missing days? Was everyone else? I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, voice recordings. This is Marcus Chen. It's December 20th, 2022, 8:47 p.m. I'm in my home office. I can hear Sarah watching TV downstairs. Paranoid? Maybe. But I needed proof. Proof I was living these days. Proof they were real. January passed without incident. So did February. I started to relax. Maybe December 16th had been a fluke. Stress, exhaustion, a mini-stroke or something. Then came March 10th, 2023. Another gap. This time, I was ready. I'd been documenting everything. Had pages of notes about March 9th, what I ate, what I wore, conversations with Sarah and Emma. Even wrote myself a note. Tomorrow is March 10th. You will remember this day. I didn't. Woke up on March 11th with that same feeling. that same wrongness. Checked my documentation. March 10th had happened. I'd lived it, worked, ate Thai food for lunch, helped Emma with homework, watched a movie with Sarah. Gone, all of it, gone. The gaps started coming faster after that. April 28th, May 15th, June 3rd. Always random dates. No pattern I could find. Just gone, erased. Like someone was taking an eraser to my life, one day at a time. By September 2023, I'd lost 12 days. A day for each month I'd been seeing the short calendars. And that's when I noticed the second thing. The thing that made me start writing this story, recording it, hoping someone would listen. The gaps were getting bigger. September 18th, 2023. I'd lost 2 days in a row. The 16th and 17th. Gone. 48 hours of my life just erased. Sarah was upset when I forgot our anniversary dinner on the 17th. Emma was confused why I didn't remember her school play. "You were there, Daddy. You took pictures." She showed me. There I was, front row, smiling, holding up my phone. I looked happy, present, alive. But behind my eyes, nothing. No memory. No connection to that moment. I started sleeping in my office, told Sarah I was working on a big project. Really, I was trying to catch it happening. Whatever it was, I set up cameras, motion sensors, alarms for every hour. October 8th, lost 3 days. October 6th, 7th, and 8th. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I woke up Sunday thinking it was Wednesday. My cameras showed nothing unusual, just me, living my life, going through the motions. I looked normal in the footage, talked normal, acted normal. But watching it was like watching a stranger wearing my face. I tried staying awake, loaded up on caffeine, energy drinks, those little 5-hour energy shots. Made it 36 hours before I crashed. Woke up having lost 2 more days. I tried the opposite. Sleeping pills, melatonin, anything to control when and how I slept. Lost days anyway. I marked my body, drew on my hands with permanent marker. Little codes only I would understand. They were still there when I woke up, faded, like they'd been there for days, which I guess they had. By December 2023, I was losing a week at a time. 7 consecutive days, just gone. Sarah thought I was having a breakdown. She wasn't wrong. How do you explain to your wife that you're losing time? That days are being stolen from you? That you're living a life you can't remember? "I think you need help, Mark." Professional help. "I'm seeing Dr. Peterson. She's not helping. You're getting worse. You missed Emma's Christmas pageant. You don't remember Christmas morning. You weren't there, not really." She was crying. I wanted to comfort her. But how could I when I didn't remember the things she was talking about? That's when I found the notebook. Not my documentation notebook, a different one. Hidden in the back of my desk drawer, my handwriting, but older, worn, like I'd written it years ago. The first entry was dated June 15th, 2019, 3 years before my first missing day, 3 years before Emma's 7th birthday. But Emma was 7 in 2022, I read the entry. Emma's 10th birthday today, double digits. Can't believe my little girl is growing up so fast. The unicorn party was a hit. Sarah outdid herself with the decorations. I picked up the cake from that bakery on Division. My hand shook. I flipped through more pages. Entry after entry, my life. But wrong. Different ages, different dates, different... The last entry, December 31st, 2021. I can feel it starting, the slipping. Days feel shorter. Calendar looks wrong. Sarah doesn't notice, nobody notices. How many times have I done this? How many years have I lost? Emma turns 8 in June. Or is it 11? I can't remember anymore. I'm going to hide this notebook. Maybe next time I'll find it sooner. Maybe next time I'll understand. Remember, you're not losing days. You're losing years. I sat there, in my office, reading my own words, written by AME I didn't remember, living years I'd never lived. Or had I? I looked at the calendar on my wall, December 2023. But was it? Was it really? I crept down the hall, peeked into Emma's room. She was asleep, clutching that stuffed unicorn we'd gotten her for her birthday. 7th birthday? 10th? How old was my daughter? I didn't know anymore. The notebook had more. Notes, observations, theories. According to the other me, the me who'd written this, it wasn't days I was losing. It was entire years. Living them, forgetting them, starting over. But not quite the same. Little differences, little changes. The years don't match up, I'd written. Emma ages different. Sarah's job changes. The house is sometimes blue, sometimes gray. Small things, big things, all wrong, all right, depending on which year you remember. I checked our photo albums. Emma's birthday pictures. 2019, she looked 7. 2020, she looked 8. 2021, she looked 9. 2022, she looked 7 again. Same unicorn party. Different years. Different ages. But the same day. June 15th. The pattern finally made sense. I wasn't losing random days, I was losing specific days. The same days, every year. June 16th, July 17th, August 18th, counted out. 1 day per month, 12 days per year. Always the same dates. But here's the thing, I was living those days over and over. In different years, different versions of my life. And each time, I forgot, started fresh, until the days started disappearing again. How many times had I figured this out? How many notebooks had I hidden? How many years had I lived and lost? I looked at the calendar again. December 2023. 29 days. 2 missing. December 16th. December 31st. Tomorrow was December 31st. According to the notebook, that was the day it would reset. The day I'd forget everything. Wake up in a different year, different version of my life. Start the cycle again. Unless I could stay awake, stay aware, remember. I had less than 24 hours. I'm recording this now. December 30th, I think. 2023, probably. It's 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until December 31st. 13 minutes until I might forget everything. Sarah's asleep upstairs, Emma, too. They don't know I'm down here. Don't know I'm talking to you. Whoever you are, whenever you are. I've figured out more, not everything, but enough. The days aren't disappearing. They're overlapping, folding in on themselves. I'm living multiple versions of the same year, different timelines, different possibilities. But my mind, it can't hold them all, so it picks one, forgets the others, until the memories start bleeding through. Those missing days, I'm living them in other versions, other years. That's why everyone else remembers them. Because in this version, this timeline, they happened, just not for me. I was elsewhere. Else when. I found more notebooks, hidden all over the house, dozens of them. All my handwriting. All different years. Some from futures that haven't happened yet, some from pasts that never were. In one, Emma died at age 5. Drowning accident at the coast. Sarah and I divorced a year later. In another, we never had Emma at all. Just me and Sarah. Different house, different city. In another, Sarah died in childbirth. I raised Emma alone. All real, all true, all happening. Somewhere, some when. And I'm living them all, every version, every possibility, but only remembering one at a time, until the days start disappearing, until the memories start merging, until I can't tell which life is real anymore. 11:52 p.m. I can feel it starting, the pulling, like something's tugging at the edges of my mind, trying to make me forget, trying to make me sleep. But I need to tell you the important part, the part I've never written in any notebook, the part I've never recorded before. It's not just happening to me. Those calendars, the ones only I could see, were wrong. I was wrong about that. Other people see them too. They just forget, like I forget. The discrepancy gets smoothed over, explained away, rationalized. But some people notice, and when they do, when they really see it, they start losing days too. That's why I'm recording this, posting it, sharing it. Because maybe if enough people know, if enough people see, we can stop forgetting. Stop the cycle, figure out why this is happening. Or maybe I'm just spreading it. Maybe by listening to this, by hearing my story, you're already infected, already starting your own cycle, already losing days you don't know about yet. Check your calendar right now. Count the days, count them carefully. Is January supposed to have 31 days or 30? When's the last time you checked? When's the last time you were absolutely sure what day it was? 11:58 p.m. I can hear Sarah calling me, but her voice sounds different. Younger? Older? I can't tell anymore. Mark, come to bed. Emma has school tomorrow. Emma has school, but it's winter break. Unless it's not December. Unless it's not 2023. Unless I'm going upstairs now. Going to bed. Going to sleep. And when I wake up, I probably won't remember recording this. Won't remember you. Won't remember any of this. But you will, and now you'll start checking. Start counting. Start noticing when the days don't add up, when the memories don't match, when the calendars lie. And when you do, when you really see it, remember this. You're not going crazy. You're not losing your mind. You're losing your days. One by one, year by year, until there's nothing left but the gaps. Sweet dreams. 11:59 p.m. Wait, I hear something. Footsteps. But not from upstairs, from outside, behind me. Did you check your calendar yet? Did you count the days? Are you absolutely sure, absolutely certain, that today is the day you think it is? Because I just realized something. The timestamp on this recording, the date. It says December 30th, 2023. But that was over a year ago. So why am I recording this now? Why does it feel like tonight? Unless you're listening to this in 2023. Unless, for you, it is December 30th. Unless time isn't... No, that's impossible. You're listening to this in 2025. I'm recording it in 2023. The upload date will prove... Check the upload date. Go ahead, I'll wait. What does it say? When was this uploaded? And why? Why does that date feel wrong? How many days have you lost without knowing it? How many years have you lived without remembering? How many times have you listened to this story, forgotten it, and listened again? The calendar on my wall now shows December with 31 days. It should have 29, or 30, or I don't know anymore. But you do, don't you? You know exactly how many days December should have. How many days you've lost. How many times you've been here before. Leave a comment. Tell me what year you're in. Tell me how many days your December has. Tell me if you remember me, if you remember this story, if you remember the other times you've heard it. Because I'm starting to think. We've done this before. You and I, many times, in many years, and each time we forget. Each time, we start over. Each time, we lose another day. But maybe this time, maybe if enough of us remember, if enough of us share, if enough of us refuse to forget, maybe we can break the cycle, or maybe we'll just lose another day, another year, another life. Wait, there's something else. Something I didn't tell you. Something I just remembered, or maybe I'm remembering it for the first time. The other people. The ones like me. I found them. It started with a comment on a video. Different video. Different channel. Someone talking about losing time. The comment just said, "Check December 16th. That's all. But I knew what they meant. I reached out. Private message. We started talking. Comparing notes. Comparing calendars. Comparing lives. There's dozens of us, maybe hundreds, all losing different days, all on different cycles, but all connected somehow. All tangled up in the same whatever this is. Rebecca from Austin. She loses the 5th of every month. Been happening for 7 years. Her daughter ages backwards sometimes. Gets younger in photos, older in memories. David from Seattle. Loses random weekdays. Never weekends. Says he's lived the same Tuesday in October over 40 times. Each time slightly different. Each time his wife has a different maiden name. Maria from Boston. Only loses holidays. Christmas, Thanksgiving. 4th of July. Wakes up the day after with presents already opened. Turkey already eaten. Fireworks already watched. Her family shows her videos of herself celebrating. She looks happy. She remembers none of it. We made a group. Private. Hidden. Started mapping the patterns, looking for connections, trying to figure out the rules. Rule 1, the more you notice, the worse it gets. Once you see the missing days, they multiply. Once you count the calendars, they all start lying. Rule 2, you can't stop it. We tried everything. Staying awake, sedatives, hypnosis, meditation. Nothing works. The days take you anyway. Rule 3, the memories bleed through. Eventually. Always. You start remembering the other versions, the other years, the other lives. But never all at once. Never enough to make sense. Rule 4, it's spreading. New people join our group every week, all with the same story. Notice the calendars, started losing days, found us online. But here's the thing. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. Wondering. What if we're not the first group? What if there have been others? Dozens, hundreds, thousands, all figuring it out, all banding together, all trying to solve it, and all forgetting. What if this group, these people, this conversation has happened before? What if I've told you this exact story in another year, another timeline, another version of December 30th? The notebooks I found in my house, some of them mention a group, different names, different people, but the same idea, the same search for answers, the same failure to remember. One notebook, dated 2017, talks about a woman named Claire. Says she figured it out. Says she found the source, the reason, the cause of it all. But the entry cuts off mid-sentence, and there's no Claire in our current group. No record of her anywhere. Did she never exist? Did she exist in a timeline I can't access anymore? Did she solve it and forget? Or did solving it make her disappear entirely? 12:07 a.m. Wait, it's past midnight. It's December 31st. But I'm still here, still recording, still remembering. That's never happened before. Always reset at midnight. Always forgot by 12:01. But I'm still, oh no. I understand now, the timestamp. The confusion about dates. The reason you're listening to this in a different year than I'm recording it. It's not that the recording is old, it's that time isn't linear anymore. Not for us. Not for anyone who's noticed the missing days. We're unstuck. All of us. drifting between years, between versions, between possibilities. That's why the calendars lie. They're showing us different months from different years, different timelines bleeding through. Right now, as I'm recording this, it's every December 30th that's ever been. 2019, 2023, 2025, 2027. All of them, all at once. And you, listening to this, you're in all of them too. Every possible version of you, every possible year. The days aren't missing. We are. We're the ones who've fallen through the cracks, slipped between the calendar squares, lost in the spaces between dates. And once you notice, once you really see it, you can't go back. You can't re-anchor yourself to a single timeline. You just drift, day by day, year by year, life by life. Sarah's calling me again. But her voice, it's different each time. Young, old, happy, sad. All the versions of her from all the years we've been married, or haven't been married, or were married until, Mark, are you coming? Which Sarah is calling? Which year am I in? Which life am I living? Does it matter anymore? The group. We had a theory. Before I forgot them, before they forgot me. Or maybe we're still having it. Maybe we're always having it. The theory was this. What if someone did this on purpose? What if someone found a way to step outside of time, to see all the possibilities, all the versions, and what if they broke something in the process, created a crack that's spreading, pulling more and more people out of their fixed timelines? Or what if it's always been this way? What if some people have always been unstuck, drifting between days, living multiple lives, and we just forgot, convinced ourselves it was normal, explained away the inconsistencies? How would we know? How could we tell? If every time we figured it out we forgot, if every time we remembered, we reset. The notebook, the one I'm writing in now, I've filled it before. I can see the impressions of old words under the new ones. Same pen, same paper, same story. Different year. How many times have I made this recording? How many times have you listened? How many times have we done this dance? And why? Why can I remember this time? Why hasn't it reset? Why am I still? Someone's at the door. Knocking. At 12:14 a.m. Sarah never knocks. Emma's too young to be up this late. Unless she's not. Unless she's older in this timeline. Unless the knocking's getting louder, more insistent. Should I answer it? Should I see who's there? Or should I keep talking to you? Keep recording? Keep remembering while I can? Because I have a feeling, once I open that door, once I see who's there, everything changes, or changes back, or stays exactly the same as it's always been. The knocking stopped. Now there's just silence. That thick, heavy silence that feels like it has weight, like it's pressing against the windows, against my skull, against the very fabric of, no, they're inside. I can hear footsteps, slow, measured, coming down the hall. But the door never opened. I would have heard it, unless they don't need doors, unless they're like us, unstuck, drifting, moving between the spaces where walls should be solid but aren't. Not anymore. The footsteps are getting closer, and I can see shadows under my office door, multiple shadows, moving wrong, like they're cast by light that isn't there, from angles that don't exist. I think it's the others, the other versions of me, from the other timelines, the other years, all of them, coming to collect their memories, their days, their lives. Or maybe it's you, all the versions of you, from all the times you've listened to this, all the years you've lost. Come to ask why I did this to you, why I made you notice, Why I pulled you into this maze of missing days and borrowed time. I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't want to be alone in this. Didn't want to be the only one who knew. The only one who remembered. Even if remembering means forgetting. Even if knowing means losing everything. The door is opening, slowly, by itself, or by someone I can't see. Someone who isn't there, someone who's always been there. I can see myself, standing in the doorway. Older, younger, same clothes, different clothes. Smiling, frowning, all at once, all impossible. It's time, the other me says. All of them, in unison, in harmony, in discord. Time for what? Time to go? Time to remember? Time to forget? Time to choose, they say. Which year do you want? Which life do you keep? Which days do you sacrifice? But I don't want to choose. I want them all, every day, every year, every possibility. Even if it means living fractured, even if it means never knowing which life is real. They're shaking their heads. Our heads, my head. You can't have them all, nobody can. That's how this started. Someone tried to keep every possibility, live every life, and they shattered time itself. Made the cracks we're all falling through. Who? I ask. Who did it? They smile, we smile, I smile. Check the notebook, the first notebook. The one you haven't found yet. The one hidden where you'd never think to look. The one that explains everything. Where? Where is it? But they're fading, or I'm fading, or we're all fading together. Becoming transparent, becoming nothing, becoming everything. The last thing I hear before the darkness takes me, you already know. You've always known. You just keep choosing to forget. And then, silence. Darkness. Nothing. I wake up in my bed. Sarah beside me. Sunlight streaming through windows. Birds singing. Normal. Peaceful. Perfect. I check my phone. January 1st, 2024. A new year, a fresh start, a clean slate. But something feels off. Like I've forgotten something important. Something vital, something about days, calendars, time. I shake my head, probably just a weird dream. Too much champagne at the New Year's party. Too much stress from work. Too much... Wait, what New Year's party? I don't remember any party. Don't remember midnight. Don't remember kissing Sarah as the ball dropped. Don't remember Emma staying up late in her pajamas, excited to see fireworks. I don't remember December 31st at all. My last clear memory is December 30th. Going to bed early, working on something, recording something. But what? I check my computer, my phone, my office. No recordings, no files, no evidence of whatever I was doing. Just a notebook. Sitting on my desk, closed, new-looking, like I just bought it. I open it to the first page. My handwriting. Fresh ink. Still slightly wet. Day 1, January 1st, 2024. The cycle begins again. This time, try to remember. Check the calendars. Count the days. Look for the pattern. And whatever you do, don't trust the others. They're not trying to help. They're trying to spread it, to make more of us, to crack time wider and wider until there's nothing left but gaps. P.S. You made a recording, you uploaded it. People are listening, right now, in every year, in every timeline. They're hearing your story, starting their own cycles, losing their own days. You did this, you're patient zero, and every time you forget, you do it again. Welcome to day 1. Try to make it count. You have 365 of them, -1 for each month. -1 for each year you've lived this before. -1 for each person who listens and believes. How many days do you have left? Better start counting, Marcus. I close the notebook. My hands are shaking. My head is pounding, that same headache from when? Last year, this year, every year, I need to check something. Need to be sure, need to know if it's starting again. I walk to the kitchen. The calendar on the wall, January 2024. I count the days, 30, should be 31. It's already started. Already broken, already wrong. Or maybe it's right. Maybe it's always been 30. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong, who's broken, who doesn't fit anymore. I hear Sarah stirring upstairs. Emma's awake too, laughing about something. My family, my life, my reality. But which one? Which version? Which year? Does it matter? I make coffee, start breakfast, go through the motions, live the day. The first day, the only day, every day. And somewhere, somewhen, you're listening to a recording I don't remember making, hearing a story I don't remember telling, starting a journey I don't remember taking. But you'll remember, for a while, until you don't, until you find your own notebook, your own first day, your own missing pieces, and then you'll understand. We're all losing days, we're all living multiple lives, we're all forgetting and remembering and forgetting again. Welcome to the cycle. Subscribe if you want to remember. Share if you want others to remember. Comment if you already know. You've been here before. We all have. And we'll all be here again. Same story, different year, missing different days, until there's nothing left but the gaps between moments. The spaces where our lives used to be. The silence where our memories should echo. Good night, check your calendar, count your days, and whatever you do, don't fall asleep on December 31st. Trust me, I've made that mistake before. We all have. Over and over and over again. Story number 2. The smell hit me first. Sweet, like honey mixed with pennies. That's when I knew something was wrong with my gutters again. But this time it wasn't leaves or rainwater backing them up. I'm recording this because I need someone to know what really happened. If you're listening to this right now, check your gutters. Please, before it's too late. The story begins now. My name is David Chen, and I bought my first house in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, last October. A modest 2-story colonial on Maple Street. White siding, black shutters. The kind of place where kids would trick or treat without their parents worrying. The inspector said everything was perfect except for one thing. The gutters needed cleaning. Probably hasn't been done in years, he'd said, tapping his clipboard. But that's an easy fix. $100 and you're golden. I should have hired someone. God, I should have just hired someone. But I was 32, able-bodied, and trying to prove I could handle homeownership. So, that first Saturday in November, I dragged out the ladder from the garage. The metal was cold against my palms, frost still clinging to the rungs even though it was past noon. The leaves came out in thick, wet clumps, black and decomposed, smelling like forgotten vegetables in the back of a fridge. I worked my way around the house, filling garbage bag after garbage bag, normal stuff, until I reached the back corner, the one facing the woods. The leaves there were different, drier, and underneath them, this thick, amber substance, like tree sap, but wrong somehow. It clung to my gloves, warm despite the November air. When I tried to wipe it off on my jeans, it left iridescent streaks that caught the light. Probably just old pine resin, I told myself. But we didn't have pine trees, only oaks and maples. That night, I heard the dripping, steady, rhythmic, like a leaky faucet, but heavier. I checked the kitchen, the bathrooms, even the basement. Nothing. It wasn't until I stood in the guest bedroom that I realized it was coming from outside, from the gutters. I grabbed a flashlight and went out back. The beam caught it immediately, that amber stuff, dripping from the cleaned gutters in long and viscous strands. It pooled on the concrete patio, steaming slightly in the cold air. The smell was stronger now, sweet enough to make my teeth ache, with that copper undertone that made my stomach turn. I touched the concrete where it had dripped, still warm, almost hot. Inside, I Googled everything I could think of. Amber substance in gutters, warm liquid from roof, sweet-smelling gutter overflow. Nothing. Just ads for gutter cleaning services and tips for winter maintenance. The dripping continued all night. I lay in bed, counting the seconds between drops. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, drip, like clockwork, like something breathing. By morning, the patio was covered. A thick, golden puddle that hadn't dried or frozen despite the 30-degree weather. I grabbed a stick and poked at it. The surface rippled, then smoothed itself out, like it was alive. I called my neighbor, Jim Morrison. 68 years old, lived on Maple Street his whole life. He came over in his bathrobe and slippers, coffee mug steaming in his hand. "Well, that's new," he said, crouching beside the puddle. "You check your roof? Maybe something died up there?" But nothing had died. I climbed back up, checked every inch. The gutters were clean, the roof intact. No signs of animals or nests or anything that could produce whatever this was. "Might want to call someone," Jim said before leaving. "My nephew does pest control. Want his number?" I took it, but didn't call. Part of me was embarrassed. Part of me was curious. What was this stuff? Where was it coming from? That night, I set up a camera, just my old phone propped in the window, recording the gutters. I needed to see what was happening when I wasn't watching. The dripping was louder, faster. 1 Mississippi, 2, drip, 1 Mississippi, 2, drip. I made chamomile tea, tried to read, but my eyes kept drifting to the window, to the darkness beyond the glass where something was flowing from my home. Around midnight, I heard a splash. Not a drip, a splash, like someone had dumped a bucket of water. I ran to the window, flashlight in hand. The puddle had tripled in size, spreading across the patio like spilled syrup. And in the center, something moved. Just a ripple at first, then another, like something swimming just beneath the surface. I pressed my face against the glass, trying to see better. The ripples stopped. The surface went still. Then, I swear to God, it pulsed. The entire puddle contracted and expanded like a heartbeat. I backed away from the window, hand over my mouth. What the hell was in my gutters? The next morning changed everything. I woke to find the puddle had spread to my lawn, killing the grass in a perfect circle. The dead grass wasn't brown, it was white. Bleached, like something had sucked all the life out of it. But that wasn't the worst part. In the center of the puddle, perfectly preserved, was a handprint, small, child-sized, as if someone had pressed their palm into wet cement. I called Jim immediately. He came over with his nephew, Mike, a heavyset guy in his 30s with Morrison Pest Control embroidered on his jacket. "Never seen anything like this," Mike said, kneeling beside the handprint. He took out a specimen jar, tried to collect some of the substance. It clung to his gloved fingers, stretching like taffy before snapping back into the puddle. "You said this came from your gutters." He looked up at the roof line, frowning. "Mind if I take a look?" I held the ladder while he climbed, watched him lean over the edge, peering into the gutter. His frown deepened. "There's something in here," he called down. "Looks like roots, but they're the wrong color." He came down with a sample. What he showed me made my skin crawl. They did look like roots, thin and fibrous, but they were that same amber color, and they were warm. I could see steam rising from them in the cold morning air. "I'll run some tests," Mike said, sealing the sample. "But honestly, you might want to call the city. or the EPA. This could be some kind of contamination. After they left, I stood in my backyard, staring at that handprint. It was so perfect, so deliberate, like someone was trying to tell me something. I spent the day researching the house's history, county records, old newspapers, anything I could find online. The house was built in 1954 by a family named the Westbrooks. They lived there until 1978 when they suddenly moved. No explanation in the records, just gone. The next owners lasted 5 years, then 3 years, then 2. The house had changed hands 7 times before I bought it. Always sold quickly, always below market value. The real estate agent had said it was because of updating needs, but the house had been beautifully maintained. That evening, the dripping turned into a steady stream. I watched from the kitchen window as the amber substance poured from the gutters like a waterfall. The puddle expanded, creeping across my lawn, reaching for the foundation of the house. And there were more handprints now, dozens of them, all child-sized, pressed into the surface at different angles. Some overlapping, some perfectly spaced, like a group of children had been playing in it. I called Mike. "You need to see this." He arrived within minutes, took one look, and pulled out his phone. "We're calling the authorities. This is beyond pest control." But before he could dial, the flow stopped. Just stopped. Like someone had turned off a faucet. The puddle began to recede, pulling back from the grass, shrinking toward the patio. Within minutes, it was gone. Only the bleached grass and a faint sweet smell remained. Mike and I stood there, stunned. He put his phone away slowly. Maybe we wait. See if it happens again. Document it properly. I agreed. What else could I do? Call the police and say my gutters were leaking something that left ghostly handprints? They'd think I was crazy. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the guest bedroom with my phone, recording the gutters. Waiting. Around 3 a.m., I heard it. Not dripping this time, scratching, like fingernails on wood. I crept to the window, peered out into the darkness. The motion sensor light clicked on, illuminating the patio. Empty. But the scratching continued, coming from above. From the gutters. I grabbed the flashlight, went outside. The cold hit me like a slap, but I barely felt it. I was too focused on that sound. Scratch, 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 rhythmic, deliberate. I shined the light up at the gutters. Something moved. Just a flash of pale flesh before it disappeared over the roofline. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. That wasn't an animal. The shape was wrong. The movement too fluid. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Is someone there?" The scratching stopped. The night went silent except for my ragged breathing. Then, from somewhere on the roof, a giggle, high-pitched, childlike, but wrong, like it was coming through water. I ran inside, locked the doors, and called 911. "There's someone on my roof," I said, trying to sound calm. The police arrived in 10 minutes. 2 officers with flashlights, checking the property. They found nothing, no footprints in the frost, no disturbances on the roof. Just me, wild-eyed and shaking, talking about amber goo and phantom children. "Maybe it was a raccoon," the younger officer suggested. "They can sound pretty human sometimes." They left me with a case number and a look that said they thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. The next 3 days were quiet. No dripping, no scratching, no amber puddles. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it all. Stress from the move. Too much caffeine. Not enough sleep. I tried to return to normal. Went back to work at the accounting firm downtown. Answered emails. Attended meetings. But I couldn't focus. Every spreadsheet reminded me of that amber surface, perfectly smooth until something moved beneath it. Every conference call sounded muffled, like voices through water. My coworker Sarah noticed. "You okay, David? You've been distant." "Just the new house," I said. "Still settling in." She smiled, sympathetic. I remember my first house. Every noise had me convinced it was falling apart. You'll get used to it. But I wasn't getting used to it. I was unraveling. I'd catch myself staring at drains, watching for movement. The office water cooler gurgled and I'd flinch. Even my coffee looked suspicious. Too dark, too thick. Wednesday night, I tried to convince myself everything was fine. Made spaghetti, watched the Iowa game, even had Jim over for a beer. We sat on my back patio, carefully avoiding looking at the bleached grass. "How's treating you better?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Must have been some weird tree fungus or something." He nodded, but I caught him glancing at the gutters. "You know, the Westbrooks used to have barbecues back here, every Sunday after church. Their kids would play while the adults talked. Normal family." "What were they like, the kids?" Jim shifted in his chair. "Sweet kids. The oldest, Emma, she was maybe 10, always helping her mother. The twins, Ben and Lucy, couldn't have been more than 6. Used to see them playing hopscotch right where—" He gestured vaguely at the bleached circle. "You were here when they disappeared?" "Everyone was. Whole neighborhood searched for days. Police brought in dogs, helicopters, everything. Those kids just vanished, like they were never here at all." He finished his beer quickly after that. Made excuses about getting home. I didn't blame him. The sun was setting, and we both knew what darkness brought to this house. Then Thursday came. I woke at 3:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because the clock's red digits were the only light in the room. At first, I thought it was the wind. Iowa gets these sudden temperature drops in November. Makes the house settle in weird ways. But this wasn't settling. It was humming, a child's tune, wordless but familiar. Like something from a music box, but slower. Distorted. I lay there, blanket pulled to my chin, trying to place it. Then I realized it was Ring Around the Rosie. But wrong. Each note held too long, wavering like it was being sung underwater. The humming came from everywhere and nowhere. I sat up, listened harder. The ceiling. It was in the ceiling, traveling through the space between floors like something crawling through the insulation. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and that's when I saw them. Wet footprints on my bedroom ceiling, small, child-sized, leading from the corner where the wall met the ceiling, across to directly above my bed. Fresh prints, still dripping. A drop hit my forehead. Warm. Sweet. I rolled out of bed, wiped my face with shaking hands. The substance clung to my skin, tacky and wrong. The humming grew louder, and now there were words. Ashes, ashes. We all fall. But they didn't say down. The word hung in the air, unfinished, like they were waiting for something, for someone. I ran to the bathroom, turned on every light, scrubbed my face until it was raw. In the mirror, I looked haunted. Dark circles, pale skin, eyes too wide. When I turned off the faucet, I heard it again. Not humming now, laughing, not outside, inside, in my walls. The laughter echoed through the pipes, distorted and hollow, like voices in a cave. I pressed my ear against the bathroom wall, following the sound. It was coming from the gutters, traveling down through the downspouts, filling my home with that horrible, waterlogged joy. I called in sick to work, spent the day tearing apart the guest room, looking for the source. Behind the drywall, I found them. More of those amber roots. They'd grown through the exterior wall, spreading like veins. They pulsed with warmth. And when I cut one, it bled. Not blood, but that same sweet substance. The laughter stopped the moment I cut it, replaced by crying. Soft, muffled, like children behind a door. I dropped the utility knife, backed out of the room. The crying followed me, growing louder, more desperate. I called Mike. "You need to come now. Bring whatever you need to kill roots. Poison, fire, I don't care." He arrived with industrial-grade herbicide and a grim expression. "I did some research on your house," he said, suiting up in protective gear. "You need to hear this." We sat at my kitchen table while the crying continued upstairs. He pulled out his phone, showed me newspaper clippings he'd found at the library. 1978, he said. The Westbrook family had 3 children. They disappeared one October night, just gone. Parents said they heard them playing in the backyard, went to check, found only their shoes by the back patio. My blood went cold. The back patio, where the puddle always formed. Police dragged the woods, checked the storm drains, nothing. Case went cold. Parents moved away a month later. He swiped to another article. But here's the thing. Every family since has reported strange things, sounds of children, things in the gutters. Most don't stay long enough for it to get bad. How bad? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. He showed me one last article, from 1995, a family of 5. The parents had called 911, reporting that something was trying to pull their children through the walls. By the time police arrived, the kids were catatonic. They recovered, but never spoke about what happened. The family moved that night, left everything behind. "We need to get you out of here," Mike said, but I couldn't leave, not yet. I needed to understand. Those children, the Westbrook kids, what happened to them that night? Mike stayed with me. We set up cameras throughout the house, motion sensors in the yard, even a thermal imaging device he used for finding pests in walls. If something was going to happen, we'd document everything. At exactly midnight, the gutters began to overflow, not dripping, gushing. The amber substance poured down the sides of the house like thick curtains, but this time, it didn't pool on the ground. It clung to the siding, spreading across the exterior walls like honey. Mike grabbed the thermal camera, aimed it at the wall. Jesus Christ. David, look at this. The screen showed heat signatures, small bodies, child-sized, pressed against the interior of the walls, dozens of them, all trying to push through. The crying had stopped. Now there was only breathing. Wet, labored, like lungs full of liquid. The walls began to bulge, drywall cracking, paint peeling. Whatever was in there wanted out. "We need to go," Mike said, grabbing my arm, but I couldn't move. Because I finally understood. The amber substance. It wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from inside the walls. Inside were those children. God help me. Where they'd been all along. A hand burst through the drywall. Small, pale, dripping with amber fluid. Then another and another. They grabbed at the air, searching, reaching. We ran. Out the front door, across the lawn, not stopping until we reached Mike's truck. Behind us, the house groaned. Every window glowed amber, lit from within by that horrible substance. And in every window, small shapes moved, pressing against the glass, trying to get out or trying to get in. I stayed at Jim's that night. Couldn't go back, wouldn't. Mike called his contacts. People who dealt with things insurance companies wouldn't believe. By morning, 3 vans were parked outside my house. No company names, no uniforms, just serious people with serious equipment. The lead investigator was a woman named Sarah Kim. She took one look at the thermal footage and made a call. Within an hour, the house was wrapped in plastic sheeting. quarantined. "We've seen this before," she told me, voice carefully neutral. "Not often, but enough. Old houses, traumatic events. Sometimes things get stuck." "Stuck?" I repeated. She showed me photos on her tablet. Other houses, other towns, same amber substance. "We think it's a preservation medium, organic, but not from this ecosystem. When children go missing near certain geological features, sometimes they don't actually go anywhere. They get absorbed, preserved, waiting. Waiting for what?" She didn't answer, just handed me a check. "This is from our organization. It's enough to cover your mortgage and moving expenses. You'll sign the house over to us. We'll handle the rest." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but then I heard it, even from Jim's house 2 doors down. Children laughing, playing, happy, and underneath, that wet breathing sound. I signed, but the story doesn't end there. I wish it did, but some things follow you, even to the desert. The moving truck came that afternoon. I grabbed what I could, left the rest. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. The plastic sheeting was moving, bulging, like something inside was trying to break free. I remember passing the "Now Leaving Cedar Rapids" sign, feeling like I could breathe again. The highway stretched ahead, flat and endless, taking me away from whatever lived in those walls. I drove 16 hours straight, only stopping for gas and coffee. Phoenix seemed like another planet, dry, clean, no basements, no old trees, no history soaking into the soil. The apartment complex was new construction, everything white and beige and temporary. No character, no personality. Perfect. I signed a lease that day, moved in with just my clothes and laptop. Fresh start. For 2 weeks, it worked. I slept through the night, took showers without checking the drain, even started looking at job listings, planning a future. The Iowa house felt like a bad dream, something that happened to someone else. Then I got the call from Jim. "David, I don't know how to tell you this." His voice was strange, hollow. "The house, it's gone." "They demolished it already?" "No, you don't understand. It's gone. Like it was never there. I woke up this morning and there's just an empty lot, the foundation, the driveway, everything. Gone." I stood on my apartment balcony, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the endless Arizona sky. "That's impossible." "I took pictures," he said, "sending them now." The photos showed my old lot, but it wasn't just empty. It was wrong. The grass was different, older, like it had been growing undisturbed for decades. Even the trees I knew were young looked ancient, their branches reaching over space where my house should have been. "Jim, are you okay?" A long pause. "I've been having dreams about children playing in my yard. Children I don't recognize. They're wet, like they've been swimming, and they keep asking me to come play." "Don't," I said immediately. "Whatever you do, don't go outside when you hear them." "It's not just me. Mrs. Patterson, the Nguyen's, everyone on the street. We all hear them now, like they're looking for something. Looking for somewhere new to..." The line went dead. I tried calling back. Nothing. Called the Cedar Rapids police, but they said there was no Maple Street in their city. Never had been. I flew back 2 days later. Had to see for myself. The GPS led me to where my neighborhood should have been, but there was only farmland, rolling hills of corn, a red barn in the distance. No suburban development. No sign that houses had ever stood there. I knocked on doors in the surrounding area. No one had heard of Maple Street. The county records office had no documentation of the development. The real estate agent who sold me the house, her office didn't exist. Her license number was fake. Even my mortgage documents, when I pulled them out, The text had faded, like old receipts left in the sun, but I still had the videos, the photos, the thermal imaging from that last night. Proof that it had all been real, that somewhere, Jim and Mike and my neighbors were... Where? When? I stayed in a motel that night. Couldn't sleep. Kept checking the news for mass disappearances, gas leaks, anything that might explain a whole street vanishing. Nothing. It was like the universe had simply edited them out. The next morning, I found something in my motel bathroom. A single amber drop on the white tile. Still warm. They'd followed me. I drove back to Phoenix that day, but it didn't matter. The drops appeared everywhere now. My apartment bathroom, my car, my office. Always single drops, always warm, always in places I'd just been, like footprints following me. 3 weeks later, Jim called, said the house was gone, not demolished, gone, like it had never been there, just an empty lot with dead grass in a perfect rectangle. The city had no record of the demolition, no permits, no documentation, just gone. But I'd already talked to Jim. He'd vanished with the rest of the street. This wasn't Jim. Couldn't be. "Who is this?" I whispered. The voice that answered wasn't Jim's anymore. It was younger, lighter, wet. "We miss you, Mr. David. The house is lonely. The walls are so cold without you." I hung up, threw the phone across the room, but I could still hear it. That young voice, coming from my walls now, my Phoenix walls, my new walls that had no history, no basement, no reason to carry voices. Ring around the rosy, pockets full of... I moved again, and again. Las Vegas, Denver, Seattle, didn't matter. The drops followed. The voices found me, always children, always wet, always asking me to come home, to come play. I live in Arizona now, far from Iowa, far from woods and rain and gutters that might overflow. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I hear it, dripping somewhere in my walls, sweet and warm and wrong. I check every time, find nothing. Tell myself it's just pipes, just the house settling, just my imagination. But I know the truth. Last week, I got a package, no return address. Inside, a child's drawing. Crayon on construction paper. It showed a house with black shutters, stick figures in the windows, and something golden pouring from the roof. At the bottom, in careful kindergarten letters, "Come home." The paper was damp, smelled like copper and honey. I burned it in my sink, watched the edges curl and blacken, but the smell lingered. And that night, I found a handprint on my bathroom mirror. Small, perfect, like someone had pressed their palm against the glass from the other side. I don't shower anymore. Just quick rinses under water I've checked 3 times. I keep towels stuffed under my doors. I've sealed every drain with duct tape, but it doesn't matter. The drops still appear. The voices still call. Sometimes, late at night. I Google my old address, 1247 Maple Street, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Nothing comes up, like it never existed. But I know it did. I have the scars to prove it. Physical ones from tearing apart walls. Mental ones from what I saw inside them. Dr. Kim calls sometimes, checks in, asks if I've noticed anything unusual. I lie, say everything's fine, but she knows. I can hear it in her voice. She's waiting for something. They all are. Because here's what I've figured out. What no one told me, but I understand now. The house didn't disappear. It dispersed, spread itself thin, followed everyone who'd ever lived there, ever entered there, ever believed in what was inside those walls. We carry it with us now, in our bones, in our dreams, in the spaces between heartbeats where children's voices echo. And one day, when enough of us are gathered, when enough drops have fallen and enough voices have called, it will reform, pull itself together from all our scattered pieces. And when it does, those children will finally have enough playmates. They're not gone. Those children, whatever they became, they're still there. In the spaces between walls, in the dark flow of gutters, waiting, preserved, looking for a way back. And sometimes, when it rains, I can smell it. Sweet like honey, metallic like pennies, like something that isn't water, overflowing, but now I smell it even when it doesn't rain. Even here in the desert where water is scarce and gutters stay dry. Because the truth is, it was never about the gutters, never about the house. It was about what flows through all of us. The hidden channels in our bodies where memory pools and ferments. We all have gutters, internal ones, places where things collect, decompose, transform into something else. And sometimes those gutters overflow. With something that isn't water, something that remembers, something that waits, something that wants to play forever. If you made it this far, check your gutters, listen to your walls, and if you ever smell something sweet where sweetness shouldn't be, run. Don't investigate, don't document, just run. Because some things that overflow, they're not meant to be contained. And some children who go missing, they never really leave. They just find new ways to play. What's in your gutters? Let me know in the comments below, if you dare. And if this story kept you up tonight, make sure to subscribe. I have more tales that will make you question every creak in your house, every drop of water, every shadow in the corner of your eye. Sleep tight. Story number 3. The lights had been out for 3 hours when the first knock came. You know that feeling when every hair on your body stands up? When your brain screams danger, but you can't explain why? That's what I felt that October night in my apartment in Burlington, Vermont. And if you're listening to this right now, cozy in your bed with the lights on, good, keep them on. Because what I'm about to tell you might make you reconsider ever opening your door during a blackout again. Before you ask, yes, this really happened. And no, I still don't have all the answers, but I need to share this. Maybe one of you out there has experienced something similar. Maybe you can help me understand. Drop a comment if you have. Please, I need to know I'm not alone in this. The story begins now. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'd lived in that third-floor apartment on Cherry Street for 2 years. It was one of those old Victorian houses converted into separate units. You know the type. Creaky floors, thin walls, radiators that clanged like ghosts in chains. But the rent was decent, and my neighbors were quiet. Well, they were quiet until that night. The power went out at 8:47 p.m. I remember because I was halfway through a Netflix episode, curled up on my couch with a mug of chamomile tea. 1 second, I'm watching some true crime documentary. The next, complete darkness. The sudden silence was almost violent. No hum of the refrigerator, no whir of the heating system. Just nothing. I fumbled for my phone. The screen's glow felt harsh against the absolute black of my apartment. No signal. That should have been my first warning. Blackouts don't usually affect cell towers. I found my emergency flashlight in the kitchen drawer, right where I'd left it after last winter's ice storm. The beam cut through the darkness, creating shadows that seemed to move just outside my vision. I told myself it was just my eyes adjusting, just my imagination running wild in the dark. The first 15 minutes were almost peaceful. I lit some candles, found my portable radio. The static was thick, but I caught fragments of news. Widespread outage affecting Burlington and surrounding areas, cause unknown, authorities investigating. Then I heard it. A shuffle in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their feet. Mrs. Rodriguez from 3B had mobility issues. Maybe she needed help? I moved toward my door, flashlight in hand. The shuffling stopped right outside. I waited. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3, knock, knock, knock. 3 perfectly spaced knocks. Not too loud, not too soft, almost polite. "Mrs. Rodriguez?" I called out, my hand on the doorknob. No answer. Knock, 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 the exact same rhythm, the exact same pressure. Like a recording being played back. Something in my lizard brain, that ancient part that kept our ancestors alive, screamed at me not to open that door. My hand froze on the knob. The metal felt ice cold even though my apartment was still warm from the heating before the power cut. "Who is it?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. Silence, then, "Sarah." The voice was wrong. It sounded like Mrs. Rodriguez, but stretched. Like someone had taken a recording of her voice and slowed it down just enough to hit the uncanny valley. You know that feeling when AI tries to mimic human speech but something's just off? That's what this was. But worse, because it was coming from right outside my door. "Sarah, I need help." Each word came out with these little gaps between them. Like whoever was speaking had to remember how words worked. I backed away from the door. My flashlight beam shook. I hadn't realized my hands were trembling. I'm calling 911, I lied, holding up my dead phone like a shield. The shuffling resumed, moving away from my door, but not toward Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment. The sound went in the wrong direction, toward the stairs leading up to the 4th floor. But there was no 4th floor. The stairs ended at a locked door to the attic that no one had opened in years. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, every muscle tense, waiting. Nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing and the distant wail of sirens somewhere in the city. Then I heard it, from directly above my ceiling. Footsteps. Slow, measured footsteps in an attic that was supposed to be empty. I need you to understand something about that attic. In 2 years of living there, I'd never heard a single sound from above. The landlord, Mr. Garrison, had told me during my lease signing that it was just storage. Nothing up there but old furniture and insulation, he'd said. Been locked up since the 80s. But now, footsteps. Moving from one end of the ceiling to the other, stopping directly above my living room. I grabbed my phone again, desperate for signal. Nothing. I tried the landline in my kitchen. Dead. The blackout had taken everything. The footsteps above stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I found myself holding my breath, straining to hear. Then, a different sound, like fingernails on wood, scratching, right above where I was standing. I moved to my bedroom, and the scratching followed. To the bathroom, it followed. Whatever was up there was tracking my movement through the apartment. Another knock at my door, this time harder, more insistent. Knock, knock, knock. "Sarah, please." Not Mrs. Rodriguez's voice this time. Mr. Kim from 3C, but wrong in the same way. That stretched, unnatural quality that made my skin crawl. "We need to come in." "We?" I pressed my ear against the door, trying to hear how many people were out there. The wood was cold, too cold, like pressing your face against a freezer door. Through the peephole I saw darkness. But not normal darkness. It moved, shifted, like something viscous was covering the lens. The scratching above intensified, and then I heard something that made my blood freeze. My own voice. From the attic. "Help me." It was perfect. Every inflection, every tone. If I hadn't been standing there, mouth clamped shut, I would have believed it was me. The knocking spread, not just my door now, but the walls, all around my apartment. Soft at first, then building. Like dozens of hands were trying to find a way in. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my emergency backpack, the one I'd packed after watching too many disaster prep videos on YouTube, and headed for my bedroom window. The fire escape was old and rusty, but it had to be better than whatever was happening inside. The window wouldn't budge. Not stuck. Frozen. Ice crystals had formed around the frame, even though it was only October. My breath came out in visible puffs. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Behind me, my front door began to rattle. The knob turned left, then right, testing. I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox and smashed the window. The glass shattered outward, and warm air rushed in. Warm. That didn't make sense. It was colder inside my apartment than outside. As I climbed through, I risked one look back. The darkness in my apartment wasn't normal. It had texture, depth, like looking into deep water where things might be swimming just below the surface. The fire escape groaned under my weight, but held. I made it down one floor before I saw them. Every window in the building was dark except one. Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment glowed with a sick, pale light. Not electric. Something else, like the phosphorescence you see in deep ocean creatures. Through her window, I saw her, standing perfectly still in the center of her living room. Her back was to me, but something was wrong with her posture. Too straight, too rigid, like someone had replaced her spine with a steel rod. Then she turned her head, just her head, a full 180 degrees while her body remained facing away. Her eyes were gone, in their place. That same pale light, leaking out like tears. Her mouth opened, too wide, way too wide, and she spoke without moving her lips. "Sarah, come back." I practically flew down the remaining stairs. My feet hit the alley, and I ran. Behind me, I heard windows opening. All of them. Every window in the building, opening in perfect synchronization. I didn't look back. You never look back. That's horror movie 101, right? The street was wrong too. Empty, not just no people, no cars, no lights in any building. Like the entire block had been erased except for our building. The darkness beyond the street looked solid. Like if I ran too far, I'd hit a wall of black. My car was parked right where I'd left it. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking so bad I dropped them twice. The engine turned over, thank God, but the radio was just static. Every station, even the emergency broadcast system. I drove toward downtown, but the streets were a maze. Roads I'd driven 100 times led to dead ends. Street signs were blank. The darkness pressed in from all sides, my headlights barely cutting through it. Then I saw someone, a figure standing in the middle of the road. As I got closer, my headlights revealed me. It was me, same clothes, same hair, same everything. But when this other me smiled, the expression was all wrong, like someone who had only seen smiles in pictures, trying to recreate one. I slammed the car in reverse. In the rearview mirror, another me. This one with that pale light leaking from her eyes. I was surrounded. Versions of me, closing in from all directions. I closed my eyes. I know it sounds crazy, but I remembered something my grandmother used to say. When the world stops making sense, close your eyes and trust your other senses. I drove with my eyes closed. Sounds crazy, right? But the moment I stopped looking, I could feel the real road beneath my tires. The fake ones. They had no substance when you weren't watching them. I must have driven for 10 minutes blind before I opened my eyes again. I was at a gas station on the edge of town. Lights on, people inside, normal people, with normal eyes, moving in normal ways. I stumbled inside, probably looking like a crazy person. The teenager behind the counter barely glanced up from his phone. "Power's out in half the city," he said. "Weird stuff happening. You okay?" I bought a coffee with shaking hands and sat in my car until dawn. When I finally drove back to my apartment, everything was normal. Mrs. Rodriguez was on the front step, feeding the stray cats like she did every morning. She waved at me. her eyes perfectly normal, perfectly human. "Some blackout last night, eh?" she said. "I slept right through it." I need to tell you what happened at the gas station first, because that's when I realized this wasn't over. I was sitting in my car, hands wrapped around that coffee cup like it was the only real thing left in the world. The fluorescent lights of the station buzzed overhead. Such a normal sound. But after what I'd experienced, it was the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. A woman pulled up to the pump next to me, middle-aged, driving a minivan with those stick-figure family decals on the back window. Normal, safe, human. She started pumping gas, and our eyes met. She smiled, and for a second, just a split second, her pupils flashed that pale light. I blinked, and her eyes were brown again. Normal brown. Had I imagined it? She finished pumping and walked past my car, tapped on my window. Every instinct screamed at me not to roll it down, but it was broad daylight now. The sun was up, there were other people around. I cracked the window an inch. "Rough night?" she asked. Her voice was perfect, completely natural. Nothing like those stretched, wrong voices from my apartment. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She leaned closer. "It's spreading, you know, the blackouts. They're not reporting it on the news yet, but check the forums, check Reddit. People are starting to notice." Then she walked away, got in her van, and drove off, like she'd just commented on the weather. I sat there for another hour searching on my phone, and I found them, buried in local subreddits, in power company complaint threads, in paranormal forums, stories, dozens of them, all from the last few months. Denver. Heard my daughter calling for help during outage. She was at sleepover across town. Chicago. Maintenance guy kept knocking for 3 hours. Building doesn't have maintenance guy. Houston. Something wrong with shadows during blackout. They moved without anything casting them. But here's what chilled me most. The older posts. I dug deeper, used the Wayback Machine. Found similar stories going back years, decades. Always dismissed as urban legends, mass hysteria, carbon monoxide poisoning. But the details, God, the details were always the same. The knocks, the wrong voices, the cold. I drove back to my apartment in a daze. I had to. I'd left my laptop, my important documents, most of my life behind. The building looked so normal in the morning sun. Mrs. Rodriguez was indeed on the front step with her cats. Everything exactly as it should be. "Sarah," she called out, "where did you rush off to so early?" Her voice was perfect. Her eyes were perfect. But when she smiled, I noticed something. Her shadow. It was about half a second behind her movements, like it had to catch up. I mumbled something about work and hurried inside. The hallway was bright with morning sun through the windows. My apartment door stood open. I know I'd locked it when I left. I knew I had. Inside, everything was exactly where I'd left it. Except, my laptop was open on the coffee table. On the screen, a document. A document I didn't create. Just one line, repeated over and over for pages. "We knocked, you didn't answer, we knocked, you didn't answer, we knocked, you didn't answer." I grabbed what I could carry and got out. But first, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went to the basement, to the circuit breakers. Mr. Garrison had shown me where they were when a fuse blew last year. The main breaker for the building had been turned off, manually, and around the switch, scratches in the metal. Words etched deep. They need the dark to cross over. Someone had caused the blackout. Someone who knew what would happen. I moved out 3 days later. Didn't even pack properly. Just threw what I could in my car and left. Mr. Garrison kept my security deposit, but I didn't care. I couldn't spend another night in that place. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The thing that made me need to share this story with all of you. I found something when I was grabbing my clothes. scratched into the paint behind my dresser. Words, dozens of them. Different handwriting, different decades probably. All saying variations of the same thing: don't answer during the blackout. They come when the lights go out. It's not them. Trust the cold. And the one that haunts me most, in what look like fresh scratches. You let them in. They're in you now. But there was more. A name. Rebecca Chen, 1987. My last name. And a date 36 years ago. I called my mom that night, asked her if we had any family in Burlington. She got quiet, too quiet. Why are you asking about that? Her voice was careful, controlled. Mom, did someone named Rebecca Chen live there in 1987? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, that was your aunt, my sister. She died young. We don't talk about her. How did she die? Sarah, why are you... How did she die? She disappeared. During a blackout. They found her 3 days later in her apartment. The doctors said it was like she'd been frozen from the inside out. But it was July, the middle of summer. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. Sarah, are you there? Where are you living? Please tell me you're not in Burlington. Please tell me you're not on Cherry Street. I hung up. I had to. Because if I'd stayed on the line, I would have had to tell her. Tell her about the knocks. Tell her about the voices. Tell her that I think Aunt Rebecca had answered the door. I've moved 3 times since then. Different cities, different states. But sometimes, during storms, when the power flickers, I hear it. That shuffling in the hallway. Those 3 perfect knocks. And each time they sound a little more like me. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything I remember, every detail. Because sometimes I wake up and things are different. Small things. My coffee mug is on the left side of the sink instead of the right. My shoes are tied differently. The TV is on a channel I never watch. I tell myself I'm just tired, stressed, that I'm misremembering. But then I look at my journal, and there are entries I don't remember writing, in my handwriting, about nights I don't remember living. The last one was 3 days ago. The knocking stopped, I let them in. It's easier now, we're all together. We're all waiting. The next blackout is soon. I live in Portland now, in a high-rise with a generator. I chose it specifically for that. Backup power. Always light, always safe. But last week there was a blackout. Citywide, the generator failed. And I sat in the dark, every light source I owned blazing around me. Candles, flashlights, even my laptop on battery power. And I waited. The knocks came at midnight. But this time they weren't at my door. They were coming from inside my walls. Soft at first, like mice in the insulation, but rhythmic, deliberate. Knock, 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 from the wall behind my bed, then the bathroom, the kitchen, all the walls, all at once. A symphony of knocking, like something trying to break through from somewhere else. I grabbed my emergency bag, yeah, I keep one in every place I live now, and headed for the door. But when I turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. Not locked, not stuck. It simply wouldn't exist as an exit anymore. Like the universe had decided that doors weren't for leaving. The knocking stopped. The silence was deafening. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not from the walls this time, but from right behind me. Inside the apartment. Inside the room. We've been waiting for you to come home, Rebecca. I spun around. Nothing there. Just my living room, lit by the dying light of my laptop screen. I'm not Rebecca, I said to the empty air. Rebecca died in 1987. Did she? The voice was amused now, coming from everywhere and nowhere. Or did she just change? Like you're changing? That's when I noticed my reflection in the dark TV screen. It wasn't moving when I moved, it just stood there staring at me, smiling with too many teeth. I closed my eyes. Grandma's advice: trust your other senses. But this time, with my eyes closed, I could hear more. Whispers, hundreds of them, all around me. And I understood some of the words. Names, they were saying names. Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Brown, David Kim, Yuki Tanaka, Rebecca Chen, Sarah Chen. Every generation, the voice said, closer now. I could feel breath on my neck, but I kept my eyes squeezed shut. Every generation we knock. Most don't answer. But some do. And some are chosen before they're even born. Family lines that carry the mark. The Chens have always been special to us. What are you? My voice was barely a whisper. We're what happens when the lights go out. We're the darkness between the stars. We're the pause between heartbeats. And we're already inside you, Sarah. Have been since Burlington. You let us in when you drove with your eyes closed, when you trusted the dark. I opened my eyes. The apartment was normal again. Quiet. The door opened easily when I tried the knob. I ran, got in my car, drove until dawn, then kept driving. But here's the thing. I've started noticing patterns. Cities where I stop for gas have blackouts within a week. Hotels where I stay report electrical problems. It's like I'm carrying the darkness with me now. Spreading it. I tried to go home, to warn my family, but when I got to my childhood home in Seattle, my mom wouldn't let me in. "You're not my daughter," she said through the barely opened door. "I don't know what you are, but you're not Sarah. Mom, please. My daughter called me yesterday. She's safe. She's in Portland. You're something else, something wearing her face." She slammed the door. I stood on that porch for an hour knocking, just 3 times, over and over. It wasn't until I was back in my car that I realized what I'd been doing. I haven't slept well since, because I keep wondering. That night in Burlington when I was driving blind, trusting my other senses, what if I never really left? What if I'm still there in that darkness, and everything since has been them, wearing my life like a costume, or worse? What if the real Sarah did escape that night? What if she's living her life in Portland, safe and oblivious, and I'm something else, something that thinks it's Sarah, something that's spreading the darkness wherever it goes? I need to tell you about the notebook. I found it last month in a thrift store in Albuquerque. I wasn't looking for it, but maybe it was looking for me. I'd been driving for 18 hours straight, trying to outrun another blackout. The news had stopped reporting them as isolated incidents. Rolling power failures of unknown origin, they called it now. Always hitting random neighborhoods, always lasting exactly 3 hours and 13 minutes. The thrift store was one of those cluttered places that smells like dust and forgotten dreams. I was just looking for a clean shirt. I'd been living out of my car for weeks. But there it was, wedged between 2 yellowed romance novels. A leather journal, worn smooth by countless hands. The first page made my blood freeze. Rules for Survival, by those who answered. What followed was testimonies. Dozens of them. Different handwriting, different decades. People like me. People who had heard the knocks. People who had let them in. One entry from 1973. "They can only take what you give them. Never speak your true name. Never look at your reflection in the dark. Never answer the knocks 3 times. Another from 1991. "The cold is your friend. They can't fully manifest in extreme cold. Ice is a barrier. Winter is safety." But it was the last entry that broke me, dated just 2 weeks before I found the book. To whoever finds this, I'm sorry. We tried to contain it. Those of us who were marked, we tried to stay away from populated areas, but it's spreading faster now. The barriers are weakening. Soon, every blackout will be a doorway. If you're reading this, you're probably marked 2. You'll know because the streetlights flicker when you pass. Because your reflection sometimes moves wrong. Because during blackouts you hear your own voice calling from impossible places. There's only one way to stop it. But the price? The next eclipse is in 3 months. Total darkness but natural, not their darkness. Our darkness. That's when the ritual can work. Page 47 has the details. Don't let them spread to the cities, don't let them take the power grids. Once they control the light, they control the crossing. Marcus B. I flipped to page 47 with shaking hands. The page had been torn out. Of course it had. That night, I parked at a rest stop and really looked at myself in the rearview mirror. I mean, really looked. In the harsh light of the overhead sodium lamp, I could see it. The wrongness. My eyes were the right color, but the depth was off. Like looking into a painted facade instead of real eyes. I thought about my mom. About how she'd known I wasn't her daughter. Mothers always know, don't they? But then, whose memories do I have? I remember my first day of school, learning to ride a bike, my college graduation. Are these Sarah's memories, or something else? I've started testing myself, little things. I'll think of a memory, my 8th birthday party, and then I'll write down every detail I can remember. Then I'll call someone who was there, my cousin Emma, my childhood friend Lisa. Their versions never match mine. You had a princess cake, Emma told me, but I remember dinosaurs. It was at the park, Lisa said, but I remember my backyard. Either everyone else is wrong, or I'm remembering someone else's life, multiple someone else's maybe. Like, I'm a patchwork of all the people who've answered the knocks over the years. 2 weeks ago, I met another one like me. I was at a truck stop in Oklahoma when the lights started flickering. This woman at the next pump looked at me. Really looked at me, and I knew. She had the same, not quite right depth to her eyes. How long? She asked. Since Burlington, October. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Phoenix, 2019. 5 years of running. Does it get easier? No, but you learn to manage it. Stay away from hospitals. The equipment goes haywire. Avoid security cameras. We show up wrong on them. And never, ever travel in groups. 2 of us together in one place, it accelerates things. What are we? I had to ask. She was quiet for a long moment. Doorways, she finally said. We're doorways they prop open. Every time we enter a new place, we make it easier for them to follow. Every person we interact with becomes a little more susceptible. So, we're infecting people? No, we're preparing them for when the barriers fall completely. She looked at the setting sun. I give it maybe 2 more years, 3 if we're lucky. Then every sunset becomes a potential crossing. Every shadow becomes a door. She left without saying goodbye. But she dropped something, maybe on purpose, a business card for a storage unit facility in Nevada. Unit 313. The combination written on the back. I drove there 3 days later. Inside the unit, research. Boxes and boxes of it. Newspaper clippings going back to the 1800s. Maps with red pins marking blackout incidents. Photos of people like me, their eyes circled in marker. And a letter, addressed to the next one. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone. Either I found a way to close my door, or they finally took me completely. But you need to know what we learned. They're not aliens, not demons, not ghosts. They're us, or what we become. What humanity becomes when all the lights finally go out. They're reaching back from a future where the sun died and darkness is all that's left, trying to establish themselves earlier in the timeline. Trying to change their past. Every person they take, every doorway they open, it brings that future closer. We're not fighting an invasion. We're fighting our own extinction. reaching back through time to prevent itself by causing itself. The paradox is what keeps them weak. They can't fully manifest because their existence prevents their existence. But if enough doorways open, if enough people let them in, the paradox resolves. Their dark future becomes inevitable. I found mentions of others who figured this out, groups who've tried to fight back. Look for the moth symbol. They know more than I do. They might have answers. Or they might just be another trap. Trust nothing in the dark. Not even this letter. Rebecca C. Rebecca C. My aunt. She didn't die in 1987. She became like me, and she spent years trying to understand it. I took everything from that storage unit. I've been studying it, mapping the patterns. The blackouts are spreading, yes, but there's a logic to it. They follow ley lines, population centers, power grid vulnerabilities. They're not random, they're strategic. And I think I know where they'll hit next. Chicago. During the Winter Festival, when the city does that planned lights out moment at midnight, thousands of people in the dark together. The largest voluntary blackout in history. I could warn people, but who would believe me? And worse, what if the warning is what causes people to be aware of them? What if knowledge makes you vulnerable? So I'm doing the only thing I can do. I'm driving to Chicago. I'll be there during the festival. And when the lights go out, I'll do what I should have done in Burlington. I'll answer the door. All the way. Let them take me completely. Because maybe if one doorway opens all the way, it'll be enough. Maybe they'll get what they want from me and leave everyone else alone. Or maybe I'll finally understand what my aunt understood, what all of us who've been marked eventually learn. That the real horror isn't that they're trying to get in. It's that we're already there, in that dark future, knocking on our own past, trying to save ourselves by dooming ourselves. The festival is tomorrow night. If you don't hear from me again, if this video is all that's left, remember the rules. Don't answer during blackouts. Trust the cold. And whatever you do, don't look for me, because I might come knocking. But wait, I need to tell you what happened in Chicago, because I'm still here, still recording. And what I learned, God, what I learned changes everything. The festival was massive. Millennium Park packed with families, couples, tourists, all waiting for that midnight moment when every light would go out. The city had advertised it as a return to wonder. 30 seconds of complete darkness to see the stars. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my hands shaking. I'd prepared for this, salt in my pockets. They hate salt, did I mention that? Iron filings in a vial around my neck. Every protection I'd read about in my aunt's notes. 11:58 p.m. The announcer's voice boomed across the park. In 2 minutes, we'll experience true darkness together. People cheered. They had no idea. 11:59 p.m. I could feel them gathering. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in as many seconds. Frost formed on the metal railings. Some people noticed, laughing about the crazy Chicago weather. Midnight. The lights went out. But the screaming didn't start immediately. First, there was wonder. Real wonder. The stars above Chicago, visible for the first time in decades. People gasped, pointed, took pictures with their phones. Then the knocking started. Not from doors, from the ground, from beneath our feet. Like something massive was trying to break through from below. The entire park shook. Stay calm. The announcer's voice, but wrong, stretched. Remain in darkness. Do not turn on your lights. But people were already fumbling for their phones. As the first lights flicked on, I saw them. They weren't hiding anymore. Hundreds of them, standing perfectly still among the crowd. Looking exactly like us, except for their eyes. Those pale, leaking eyes. A child near me started crying. Her mother reached for her. But it wasn't her mother anymore. The thing wearing her mother's face smiled with too many teeth. "Mommy's here," it said in that horrible stretched voice. "Come to Mommy." That's when I did something stupid, something heroic, something that probably saved that kid's life and doomed mine. I turned on every light I had, flashlights, phone, even the emergency flares from my bag. Light exploded around me in a circle, and the things, they recoiled, hissed, their human disguises flickering like bad TV reception. "Run!" I screamed. "Everyone run! Turn on your lights!" Chaos. Beautiful, life-saving chaos. Thousands of phone lights blazing to life. The things shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and began to retreat, but not before I saw their true forms in the dancing lights. They weren't monsters. They were us, humans, but ancient, withered, like they'd lived for millennia in absolute darkness. Their skin was translucent, showing black veins beneath. Their fingers were too long, evolved for feeling their way through eternal night. One of them looked right at me, and I recognized her. It was me, an ancient, darkened version of me. She smiled sadly and spoke, not in that stretched voice, but in my own. "You still don't understand. We're not invading. We're evacuating. Our son died. Our world is ending. We're just trying to find a new home before the darkness takes us completely." Then the lights drove them back, and they were gone. The official story was a mass hallucination. Gas leak, hysteria, the usual explanations. But thousands of people saw them. And now those people are like me, marked. They'll hear the knocks now, see the wrong reflections. I've infected an entire city. But here's the thing. That other me, that ancient Sarah, she dropped something before she fled. A device, like a phone, but made of some black metal that feels cold no matter how long you hold it. It has one app, a map, showing every blackout past and future. And if it's right, God, if it's right, the big one is coming, not Chicago, not New York, everywhere. A global blackout that will last exactly 3 hours and 13 minutes. December 21st, winter solstice, when the night is longest. That's when they'll make their real move. Not an invasion, an exodus. Billions of them, fleeing their dying timeline, trying to squeeze through the doorways we've opened. And maybe that's not the horror I thought it was. Maybe the real horror is that we'll turn them away, send them back to their eternal darkness, make the same choice that leads to our son dying, and our descendants desperately knocking on the doors of the past. I don't know what to do with this information. Warn everyone? Let it happen? Try to stop it? All I know is that I can't run anymore. Every city I flee to, I bring the darkness with me. Every person I meet, I make vulnerable. I'm patient zero for something that might be invasion or rescue or both. So I've made a decision. I'm going home. Real home. To my mom's house in Seattle. If she won't let me in, I'll wait on the porch. I'll tell her everything. Show her the device. Let her decide if I'm still her daughter or something else. Because I've realized something. All this time, I've been afraid of what I might be. But I never asked the important question. What if I'm both? What if I'm Sarah Chen in a doorway? What if that's what humans are meant to become? The bridge between the light and the dark. The ones who choose which future we create. The drive to Seattle takes 12 hours. I'll be there by dawn. If my mom answers the door, if she lets me in, maybe we can figure this out together. Maybe the answer isn't in running or fighting, but in understanding. Or maybe I'll knock 3 times, and she won't answer. And I'll understand why my aunt spent so many years alone, searching for answers that might not exist. Either way, by December 21st, we'll all know the truth. When every light in the world goes out at once, when the knocking comes from every door, every wall, every shadow, we'll have to choose. Answer the knocks and let them in, or leave them in the darkness and doom our own future? I think I already know what I'm going to choose, because I've felt their desperation, their fear, their hope that somewhere, somewhen there's still light left in the universe. And maybe that's why they chose the Chens. Not as victims, but as judges, as the ones who would understand both sides, who would know what it's like to be caught between the light and the dark. My name is Sarah Chen. I heard the knocks. I let them in. And on December 21st, I'm going to answer again. If you're still listening, check your calendar. Count the days until the solstice. Prepare however you think best. Stock up on lights, or practice sitting in darkness. Learn to recognize the real from the reflection. But most importantly, decide now. Before the knocking starts. Before the voices call your name, decide if you'll answer. Because they're not monsters. They're us. And one day, we'll be them. Knocking on the doors of the past, hoping someone, somewhere, will let us in. The woman at the gas station was right. It's spreading. But maybe that's not a curse. Maybe it's a choice. Sweet dreams, while you still can. This story is based on true accounts shared across multiple platforms. If you've experienced unexplained blackouts, if you've heard knocking during power outages, if your reflection has ever seemed wrong, you're not alone. Share your experience below. Subscribe for updates on the December 21st event. And remember, when the darkness comes, the choice will be yours. Will you answer? Special thanks to those who shared their stories through encrypted channels. Your experiences matter. Your voices matter. Together, we're mapping the pattern. Together, we might just save 2 timelines instead of 1. Stay bright, my friends, at least for the next few weeks. If you're still listening, check your windows. Check them right now. Are they locked? Are you sure? Because I've started noticing something. In the comments of videos about blackouts, about power outages, about things that happen in the dark, people are reporting the same thing. The knocks. The voices that aren't quite right. The cold that doesn't belong. It's spreading. So please, if the lights go out, if you hear knocking, if the voices of people you know sound just a little bit wrong, don't answer. Don't ever answer. Lock your doors, cover your windows, and wait for the real dawn. Not the fake one they'll try to show you, the real one. And if you've experienced something like this, if you've heard the knocks, please leave a comment. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I'm not alone. Because last night I heard my own voice again. From the apartment next door, an apartment that's been empty for months. It was singing a lullaby, one my mother used to sing to me, one I've never sung out loud in my life. They're getting better at being us. Sweet dreams. If this story kept you up, if it made you check your locks one more time, hit subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a good scare. And remember, when the lights go out, some doors should never be opened. What's the strangest thing you've experienced during a blackout? I'm reading every comment because I need to know how far this has spread.